coming up next.
I have yet to meet a man in my whole journey on this earth who says, yeah, I'm a good father. Every single father, every
Right.
single mother I'm talking to says, no, I've been terrible. I've done this, I've done
Oh,
that, I've done this, I've done that. We are so laden with guilt. And sometimes, quite rightly so,
right.
that you
Right.
have done wrong things. But you are not a wrong person or a bad person. You've done
Hmm.
bad things, but you're not a bad person. And I
Hmm.
think that is so important that we accept that. That's what I mean with radical self-compassion, coming back to that. You need to do a lot of mental work there first, some shadow work first. And that's where I guess a 12-step program is so beautiful,
Yes.
because as part
Part of
of
it.
the program, step 4 is that you do an inventory of what has been going on in your life. That's the biggest step.
Welcome to Faith Over Addiction podcast, where the chains of fixing and striving are broken and joy is rediscovered in Christ. You are here because you know there's more for you, a life beyond addiction's chaos, rooted in God's peace and promises. This is the place where Christian women like you learn to release the weight of fixing and striving and instead lean into God's strength to create a home filled with love, grace, and hope. She is clothed with strength and dignity. Proverbs 31:25. That's you. You may not feel like it yet, but you are stronger than you know. And God has so much more for you than carrying someone else's addiction. Here, we'll uncover how to set healthy boundaries with love and a little humor. Find resilience and grace in the messy moments of life. Celebrate small victories and embrace joy like never before. Lean into God's promises for restoration and strength because He's not done with your story or your loved ones. This is your invitation to rise up, embrace your worth in God's kingdom, and take back what's been stolen by addiction: your peace, your joy, your future. Your faith is the foundation, and your boundaries are the bridge, and God's truth is your guide. I'm Tanya Gioia, your host and fellow traveler on this journey through the chaos of addiction. I'm here to cheer you on, equip you with tools that work, and share the truth that's changed my life. The joy of the Lord is your strength. Nehemiah 8:10. Together, we'll uncover how to create safe, loving space for healing, starting with your own heart and home. By setting boundaries, trusting God's plan, and embracing His truth, you can reclaim your joy, your peace, and your family's future. Then you will be able to stand firm for your family and legacy as a kingdom daughter, a woman who can laugh at the days to come, knowing her identity is secure in Christ. So grab a cup of coffee or tea and get comfortable. Let's walk this journey together. We're about to take back what's been stolen, create a safe, healing space for you and your family, and rediscover the joy God has waiting for you. Welcome to Faith Over Addiction. I'm your host, Tanya Gioia. And here we are speaking directly to the hearts of women who are struggling with those who are dealing with addiction. And often we've lost our place. We have forgotten who we are and what our identity is. And so I have the pleasure of introducing Dr. Stephen Neff. He is a retired anesthesiologist and a functional medicine practitioner. He's got children's books. He's got books about getting my steps to sobriety. He talks about integrity, humility, transparency. We're just going to pick his brain and see where we go today on how, let's really look at how people can come back into themselves and their own identity when they are struggling, Stephen. So give us a little bit more about your story so we know who you are.
Absolutely. Tanya, thank you so much for having me as a guest on your show. And I want to say thank you to you specifically for putting this platform out there and actually having a community and tackling the hard questions. Because who wants to talk about addiction? Who wants to talk about that? That's shame and guilt. My God,
Yeah.
not in my family. No,
Mm.
we are all fine, white picket fence and everything. And especially in church. I mean, it is so difficult there. Modern churches are maybe getting a bit better, but more traditional churches to really talk about addiction is actually a challenging thing. We want
Yes.
to focus on something completely different, and it is very, very tricky. So,
Mm.
where do I come in there? Well, I'm 58, I am German and have emigrated into the world, so I'm cosmopolitan, have had more than my fair share of drama and trauma in my life, and probably had a healthy dose of generational trauma handed down from my
Mm.
forefathers. So lots of things didn't go so well. In turn, I created coping mechanisms that suited me well.
Mm.
And these are of course, the coping mechanisms that we lay down in childhood. In my case, fear avoidance. So when we talk about attachment styles nowadays, fear avoidance was mine. And fear avoidance is clearly very, very supportive of you becoming an escape master. So whenever there's
Mm.
a negative emotion, you want to run away from it. And guess what? Alcohol is a really good thing to do.
It
But
is. It works.
isn't it? But having said that, there is such a cornucopia of choice for us addicts out there.
Yeah.
My goodness, where shall I choose from? Let's see. I have got all the drugs that are so easily available today. But
Mm.
hey, what about work? What about
Mm.
workouts? What about church? What about throwing yourself at everything that has a heartbeat and make love to it behind closed doors? But shh, don't tell anyone.
Mm.
And doing all those escapisms. And I was very good in that. So I was a workaholic long before I became an alcoholic. And
Mm.
then
Mhm.
I really got a master's degree in cross addictions because once I stopped drinking, honestly, I became good in sugar. Oh, did I like sugar? And my
Absolutely. So
exactly.
talk
So
about that. Talk about the addiction switching. What
sure.
goes unhealed because, like you said, you're a master in cross addiction. So
Yeah,
we may give up one thing and go directly to the next one.
absolutely, absolutely, because we have not addressed the underlying problem.
Mm.
Because remember, alcohol is just a sign.
Mm.
It's just, it's just a way of us coping, and it has very positive things.
Mm.
I started off being 13 and yeah, a bit of potchy teenager, and I became the victim of a gang assault. Now,
Mm.
during that gang assault, I had my teeth knocked out. I felt for the next 5 years I had roaring PTSD. I had
Mhm.
all the shame of not having front teeth or having caps that fall out and etc. I
Oh.
wasn't a smiling teenager, you know? I
Mm-hmm.
had some interesting childhood there. And then, 18, I moved on. I had brought the gang leader behind bars. He had threatened to kill me. I thought I was like 80s style films. I would go for a life and death fight in 3 years' time. So I trained and prepared for that. So
Yeah.
I became addicted to martial arts. So I
Oh
worked
yeah.
hard at school, worked then to get some money because we came from poor backgrounds. So I stacked shelves. And when I was not doing that, I was training.
Mm.
And quickly that potchy teenager became Rambo. And I,
Awesome.
well, yeah, my body was awesome. My brain was absolutely not so well. It was very dark.
Right.
And so, out of 5 years' darkness, I moved away to a
Mm.
different town. That was a time before internet. And I realized, huh, this guy will never ever find me.
Mm.
Secondly, I discovered girls.
Mm-hmm.
Thirdly, one very faithful day, I was sitting at lunchtime with my friends on a Saturday in a German beer garden. Very romantic setting, very beautiful, big oak tree, sun shining, two very nice friends that I've met in my first year in university. And by that time, we had about a liter of German quality beer in me. And suddenly, I heard this roaring laughter. And I looked around and I didn't realize it had come out of my chest.
Oh,
And
good.
I had not laughed like that. I had not had this feeling of joy. And I became this giggly person thereafter. And I said, what is that? And that was the effect of alcohol
Mm,
finally letting me relax. So there
mhm.
was this gift from heaven that gave me that release, that gave me happiness, that gave me joy, that gave me all the things that were lacking and missing. The feeling
Right.
of community, everything was there. So alcohol became the savior. Let's be very clear about that. And that is so
Yes.
important. That is so important. We should never forget that. That alcohol or any addiction has a very powerful role to play. It is what keeps us warm. It is if you're in a house that burns, literally burns down around you, but you're freezing, you will put your hands onto the fire and say, "Ooh, that's
Mm,
nice and warm." Okay?
mhm,
So that's the
mhm.
same with alcohol. So let's not forget that any
Well,
addiction.
let's pause right there. So if you're loving somebody who is dealing with an addiction, Stephen has just explained to you how it starts. It starts with good
Mm,
feelings. It starts with, I feel better about
absolutely.
who I am, that I have been
Absolutely.
released by all of this. And that's how it starts. And especially if you're missing that connection and that community and all those things, this thing, whatever we decide it is, has given that to us. And we think we have some
Mhm.
control over it, right? We think,
Oh,
oh,
absolutely.
I'll just use it when I need it and then I'll set it down when I don't. And anybody
Hmm.
who has more classic, the food addiction, knows it's not that simple.
Oh, yeah. But true, true. But there are other flow-on effects that we, again, need to talk about. Again, it's not something that typically people talk about. But in my youth, so in my 20s, I was able to control my own sexuality
Mm,
very effectively with the right amount of alcohol. In
mm,
other words, I could ask a girl, well, how long would you like to make love tonight? And she said, what do you mean? Well, do you want an hour or how long do you want? We would laugh and we would make love. We would laugh and make love. And after an hour, she would say, bloody hell. Because that was the power that alcohol gave me in
ah,
the
yeah,
early
yeah.
stages. Okay, so there
Yep.
were flow-on effects there. Not only
Uh-huh.
did I have this beautiful body from the PTSD-driven workouts, but
Mm-hmm.
also now I had this weapon that with which I could initially control my body to such a degree. It was amazing. It was superpowers. So, okay, don't forget all that because
Yes, yes,
this,
because absolutely it gives you the ability to do things that you wouldn't
yeah,
actually do. You wouldn't
no,
actually
because
be
you're
able to
otherwise to
control.
inhibit it. You're otherwise to your own head. We've got 80,000 thoughts every day, 60 to
Mm.
80,000. Of these 80,000 thoughts, 80% are negative. And in my case, they were probably 99% were negative with all the darkness that I was
Even
living
though,
in.
no, no, let's go back. Even though you had this body that was perfect,
Mm,
and even though you had this superpower and
yeah,
women were there and community was
yeah,
there and you were at university and all this stuff, still 99% negative thoughts. That's what I think those
absolutely.
that love people with addiction don't realize is when
Absolutely.
you are shaming them or you are guilting them for
Oh,
whatever your
beautiful.
reasons are. We all have our pain too. They've done it 10 times more than
Oh,
you've done it from the
beautifully said.
outside.
Beautifully said. Oh, and that is wow. Bloody hell, you just stopped me at my tracks there. And this is so beautiful. No, this is beautiful because that is really what is happening. It is we are so good in the shame and guilt that we load upon ourselves. That becomes the biggest stumbling stone because you truly believe no one will ever understand what I
Mm,
have done. No one will ever be able to even come close to realizing how I feel, the pain I feel inside. But it's not a conscious thought that you say that, it's deep down there.
mm,
It's something
mm-hmm.
that smolders underneath the surface. And it's that problem, that keeps you, that these are the core beliefs. I am a failure. I am not lovable. I'm unworthy. All
Mm-hmm.
those beliefs, they were strong in me, and they still are
Now,
today. They
now let's
still
go to
are
the
today.
part. Let's go to the part where the mom or the dad or somebody says, "We love you. We're proud of you." Could you have heard it?
Ye-
Could it have resonated
Ooh,
past those negative thoughts? Could it have gotten through that shame grid?
I understand your question. I'm just reflecting on that. And there are several answers in my head. I think, to be fair, early on, no way in hell, because I would have said, "No, I'm living a normal life. I'm having a great time." What do you mean? I wouldn't even understood your question. Later on, I think the core beliefs would have been too strong, and there I would have not been able to see the alternatives, the positivity, the intention, no, the the great life that is waiting for you when you are able to stop escaping and when you are learning how to deal with your emotions, how to live with them, have to have the radical self compassion to be there with yourself, even when things are not good, or especially when things are not good.
How do you
I
get past the fear to go to the radical self-compassion? I mean, the fear is huge.
Huge, absolutely. There are courses that you can learn that, and it is essentially shadow work. It's essentially that you understand slowly but surely that trauma is normal, that your responses are normal. You don't need to load heaps of, you don't need to take the nine-tailed whip and flatulate yourself every day for it. Yes, you have done a lot of things wrong, and you're not the only one. Give you an
Mm,
example. I certainly, through much of the youth of my two boys, I was working very hard because I was seeing myself as the provider. So
mm,
16-hour days, self-made man who came from nothing, look at me now, that kind of thing was normal. But then I didn't know how to switch off. So I switched off with alcohol. So when I came home after a long day, the first thing I was having a drink to actually just chill out and say, ah, and after three drinks, finally that warmth comes out of your tummy and the kind of relaxation, your shoulders relax
mm,
physically down. Beautiful. And then you don't want to play with your kids. So,
mm.
end result, even nowadays, I know I have stuffed up the, the youth of my children. And I'm guilty of that. Now, I now have the choice to actually, again, whip myself here. Bad father, you, how dare you? I have yet to meet a man in my whole journey on this earth who says, "Yeah, I'm a good father." Every single father, every
Nice.
single mother I'm talking to says, "No, I've been terrible. I've done this, I've done that, I've done this, I've done that." We are so laden with guilt. And sometimes, quite rightly so,
Right.
that you
Right.
have done wrong things. But you are not a wrong person or a bad person. You've done
Hmm.
bad things, but you're not a bad person. And I
Hmm.
think that is so important that we accept that. That's what I mean with radical self-compassion, coming back to that. You need to do a lot of mental work there first, some shadow work first. And that's where I guess a 12-step program is so beautiful,
Yes.
because as part
Part of
of
it.
the program, step 4 is that you do an inventory of what has been going on in your life. That's the biggest step, and often the most challenging step for those people who are starting off, because you actually take ownership of your life. And that's something that someone with fear avoidance or other attachment patterns is not used to, because we're used to blaming
Mm,
others.
mm.
Look what they have done to me.
Or
Oh
I
my
wouldn't
God.
have behaved like this if you hadn't. So that's
Absolutely.
really interesting. With the fear avoidant, that's the person who refuses to take, am I getting this right? Refuses to take ownership for themselves. So the other people in their lives, how how did the other people in your life, the close people in your life, respond to you when you were not willing to take ownership?
Aggressive. Clearly aggressive. Certain interesting. You need to be very clear about that, because initially you will surround yourself with other people who have got the same addiction. So
Mm,
your social group will be those of people who enjoy a glass of Chardonnay or a whiskey or 20. So because they choose the same surrounding, we all choose people who make us feel normal, regardless how maybe societally abnormal behavior we show. So,
mm,
okay, and it does not matter what it is, it's sort of the same thing. And that's where the law of attraction comes in. If you surround yourself with 6 people who really enjoy alcohol, well, that's absolutely fine. And you can tell
yeah.
very easily. Just look around at your wall art. So if there is anything that says, well, um, a meal without alcohol is breakfast, or have you had breakfast today? Not a single drop, or something like that.
Right.
Warning sign, you're
Yeah.
normalizing the alcohol or you're normalizing certain behaviors. So it is, I think, initially you surround yourself with people who are like that. So therefore you don't get that challenge. And that was
Mm.
in my marriage. Initially, my
Mm-hmm.
wife was drinking just like me, drinking like a fish. Now, at some stage, she got sober with the help of her church,
Mm-hmm.
but to a certain degree, it was white knuckling it. She didn't do the shadow work, and to this day, she hasn't done it. And I think ultimately, that's one of the many reasons that we ultimately ended up in a divorce.
Mm.
Having said that, she white knuckled it, and then the next 3 years or thereabouts, she was very aggressive and very trying to drag me to church, number one, and I still am not sure if God is actually out there.
Yeah.
Having said that, I have come to recognize that there is a power larger than myself. Very
Right.
true, very true. And nowadays, call it schizophrenic, but I actually talk to angels.
Mm.
There's still this God dude. I'm not sure about him or her. Still not sure. Jesus Christ. Would love to have dinner with him and actually investigate him a little bit
Oh,
more.
yes. Wouldn't we all?
Wouldn't be exactly, exactly. So, as far as I am concerned, Jesus Christ and God have not touched me. Yet, at the same token, I am here and being open. So I've got a mission, a purpose. I'm driven to actually make this world a better place. And is that not really, when I throw my own prejudices away, is that not the sense or the center of Christianity, of making this world the best possible place by starting within us? Well, actually, that is the core of every self improvement that I'm doing. That is everything there. So maybe I am guided by this
Mm.
power out there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, but sorry, I'm going on a tangent here, but I
Well, let
wanted
me
to
let me
say
ask you
that.
this.
Yeah.
Go finish your thought. And I had a one pop in my head. Go ahead.
No, no, ladies first. Come on. You.
So I agree that we put people around us that look like us, right?
Mhm.
But there comes a point where the addiction gets so big,
Mhm.
everything disintegrates, right? No matter
Mhm.
what you're addicted to at that point.
Yeah.
Then it seems like you begin to put people around you who make you feel guilty. You put people, it's
Ooh.
almost a backwards effort trying to
Ooh.
get yourself out of this hole, but it just drives you deeper. That's what it looks like.
Ooh, interesting thought. Interesting thought. No, with someone like fear avoidance, no, I'm running. Sorry, girl, I'm gone. Um, so if this was a relationship that had not been anchored in marriage and children, I would have been gone. I mean, that is what I did in my youth. I had
Uh-huh.
many relationships, but they would last 2, 3 months or shorter, and I would be able to completely convince the girl that I'm the absolute best thing that walks this earth. And she would put everything on the house, and then I'm gone, kind of thing. Because as soon as the reality sinks in that it's not all about dopamine and sex and everything is beauty, rainbows, but that there is actually real life out there, I'm gone.
So what
So
made you said the children and the
mm,
marriage bond anchored it. How did that stem the fear? I mean, that's really
stem the
curious to me. How did that stem the fear? What was it that made you less afraid of leaving?
because I had been a bad boy in my youth. And I have seen how empty I was. That
Mm,
behavior was okay for a few hours. And
mm-hmm,
then what? Then there was still this emptiness. And
mm,
this is the intriguing thing. So you were saying earlier on, we were touching a little bit on that. Many of us are very successful. Many of us who come from poor circumstances, the entrepreneurs, especially in America, where there is such a kudos given to people who are self-made, etc. I was
mm,
living that. But when you talk to these people, often enough, they are so empty because
mm,
their escapism is their work.
mm-hmm.
They do 16, 18 hours and then sleep. And that's the only thing. So you look at them, if you look at their bank accounts, yeah, that's brilliant. Sometimes it's not so brilliant because they take risks. They are just never satisfied. They take risks and then fail. And
Mm,
again, Nowadays we say, well, failure is good because you can learn from it.
Go
So
to the next thing.
exactly, but yeah, but it's interesting to look at that a bit more closer, because where's the difference between someone who's taking a lot of risks and someone who's manic, who is just
Mm-hmm.
going out there and buying free Ferraris and crashing four of them in a month. Hang on, that's a bit destructive, isn't it? So, and
So
that was kind of,
the escapism was in the alcohol and the work. Did that
uh,
allow you to stay in the marriage because you were
oh, I
doing
see.
the other pieces
Right.
over there?
No, I had made a commitment that
Mm.
I have been running. I now, whatever, once I said I do, and I will be there in good days and bad days, I really meant that. And
Mm.
for me, I believed it was till death does us
Mm-hmm.
apart. And unfortunately, that was also a problem, because with me being now switching tracks completely to this core belief of I will be loyal to my wife till death, I did not recognize that we did not work on each other. Whilst there was love there, and the
Mm.
love was initially, for example, what got me to rehab, it was the love. One day, my wife and children came in, and they had, behind my back, they had organized a stay, 4 week stay in rehab, and said, look, we want to help you. But they
Mm.
came in just the morning, I was hungover as hell, and they came in, all snuggled to me in bed, say, hey, we love you. And I expected a fight about being drunk the night before, and I was showered with love. And that was completely disarming me. And they
Right.
said, hey, look, we've taken care of it. You have got leave from your department. We have organized the admission as at 10 o'clock on Friday morning, and we're going to drive you up to Auckland, and you're going to stay 4 weeks in a rehab. And we love you, really. It was that love that completely disarmed me. So if you
And you
think,
went because
and I went,
oftentimes people have this warm, fuzzy situation, but then they don't get into rehab quickly enough
exactly,
and they
and
get self sabotagey and destructive.
exactly, absolutely, and the self sabotage is part and parcel of the game. Okay, but it is sooner or later. I mean, not alcoholism and any addiction. 95% is hiding.
Mm.
95% is denial. That's part of the disease. But at
Mm-hmm.
some stage in your life, something happens, or a series of events happens. For some of us, that is DUIs, that is you having yet another bar fight or something like that. Sometimes you lose a job. It's sometimes those big events, sometimes it's smaller events. And it's just you realize that, okay, this response to many times that your wife said, hey, if you don't stop drinking, then I leave you with the kids.
So I
That could
really
be,
want to dig into the story of they came and they snuggled and they loved
mm,
on you. And
mm.
did you break down or did you just say, yes, I'll do that? Or what?
I think I just said, yes, I do that, because at that time I was finally able to admit that I'm powerless, that I can't continue the way I was. There was, whilst there was this initial trauma in youth, there were so many other traumas that had accumulated, big traumas, as in both parents coming across, and then across as in from Germany, emigrating to live with us. And then 6 weeks after they came, first my stepfather got leukemia, and he
Oh,
rotted away over a
oh,
year. And then my mum, once he was dead, she admitted that she had detected breast cancer. And by the time she showed it to me, it was clear it was completely incurable. So she rotted away for another 2 years or so.
oh
And
my.
it was awful. And there was huge financial pressures on me because I bought them a house. And it was, oh my God, it was just one hammer after the other.
Right,
So,
right.
and it was hard. And I had not learned different coping mechanisms. So I
Mm,
relied on the alcohol. And unfortunately, there is tachyphylaxis, we call it. So basically, you need more and more and more to achieve the same thing. Or in other words,
mm,
your first high, you will never ever achieve that same feeling
yeah.
again. So you're chasing it, and you're using more, and you're using different things, and no, you will not get it. And unfortunately, I was on that trajectory. The drama and trauma did not change. If at all, it escalated. And yeah, I had no other coping mechanisms. And that was my downfall. nowadays is so different because, again, coming back, you asked me earlier on radical self acceptance and self love. These are things that don't just come to you. You don't just watch a YouTube short and think, oh, now I know how to do
I can do
radical
that.
self love. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, my bottom. No. I did a 6 weeks course on that. I paid money for it, and I had some excellent teacher who actually forced us, not forced us, she suggested to us that we follow a certain practice. And one of the practices was to actually sit down with a negative emotion, to actually sit still for a moment and conjure up your worst negative emotion. And I
Yeah.
did that about 14 months ago. And
Mm.
at that time, my wife had separated. I had uh, basically lost the house. We had to sell everything, investment properties, etc. Market was down. I had no money. I had lost my job. I had lost my marriage. The kids had moved out of the house to different
Mm.
countries. So I was alone. So there was all that. And
Mm-hmm.
the core thing was fear. And so she
Mm.
said, yeah, conjure up your worst emotion. Well, fear came like a tsunami. It
Yeah.
was there. And then the practice was now sit with this fear for 5 minutes. We
Could
start
you do
now.
it? Could you do 5 minutes?
The longest 5 minutes in my life. I tell you
A long
that.
time.
But then we had also learned how to investigate and interrogate that fear. We really got to know it, got to taste it, got to feel the your skin, the blood vessels in the skin contracting, the
Mm-hmm.
sweat on your forehead, all that. And then thereafter, we were told to investigate it and nurture it, and then we were taught to love ourselves, to share compassion with ourselves, to maybe congratulate ourselves that you actually, for the first time, have not run away, the escapism I've
Yes.
been talking about, but you
Yes.
actually sat with that emotion.
Right.
As I said, the 5 longest minutes in my life, and I did not escape. I then did a technique called havening. And that havening, if you've never heard about it, is you basically you give yourself the hugest hug. So I'm right now, for those people only listening on the podcast,
That
I'm
big hug and say,
the
"Hey, we're
big
gonna
hug
be
around
okay.
there.
We got it."
I close my eyes and say, "Hey, Stefan, I love you. You're amazing. I love you so much. Look what you have gone through, and you're still here. You're so powerful, and yes, I love you." And you're talking to that inner child. You're talking to that wounded person deep in there, and you give that person a hug. Now, on a biological level, what I've just created, whilst I was talking to you here, I created a dopamine flow. So a neurotransmitter, a chemical, was released over those 15 seconds. And it's the same as a mum gets when she smells her newborn or her
Mm-hmm.
baby. And it's the same for dads. It's a very natural mechanism to us prevent hitting the child, etc. That's sort of, one of those inborn
Right.
things. I'm utilizing that to give myself love, to show myself love. And it's so beautiful. So
So
this
you're
was,
using this coping skill. What other ones? I mean, you couldn't, you
ah,
need more
there's
than
so,
this one to keep from running
oh
away.
yeah, oh yeah. Although that one actually helped me a lot for some very dark times. And because there is, whilst when well, here I am, aware of those 80,000 thoughts, aware that 80 or 90% of them in my case are negative.
Mm-hmm.
Do they still have power over me? Of course they do.
Mm.
So therefore, it's often, especially when they get very strong and very loud, very screeching like little devils,
Mm.
then especially then it's hard to break through that. But
Mm.
I think, and then, I mean, you're talking about what can you actually do, and I think that is where happiness is not an emotion, but it's a series of intentional habits that we do create. And I think that is so powerful to realize. When we are chasing happiness or joy, or however you phrase it, contentment, Zen like states, fulfillment, whatever you call it, ultimately, it's a series of habits that you can create. There's certain pillars in there in that happiness structure
Mm-hmm.
that I have started to be very religious about and very much take care of. Your sleep. I'm
Amen.
very protective of my sleep,
Yes.
100%. My hydration. As a functional medicine doctor, my nutrition.
Mm.
So I've completely over months and years changed less and less ultra processed food to a point where I'm now there's the only thing processed that is in my fridge is cheese.
Mm.
Everything else is raw and very healthy. So I've completely changed my nutrition. I have investigated myself ad libitum. I know exactly where my strengths are genetic wise, where my weaknesses are. And now I'm using nutraceuticals, nutrition, and other things to actually completely directly manage that. So I
Mm-hmm.
know, okay, I need quite a lot of protein. I need high doses of vitamin D because my vitamin D receptors don't work so well,
Mm.
etc., etc. So I know exactly what I need, and my nutraceuticals, the kind of healthy stuff that you have in addition to nutrition, are tuned in. I very much force myself to do exercise and activity every day.
Mm-hmm.
And so there is no way around that. And it is that's so often missing. Sedentary lifestyle is the new smoking nowadays. Let's be clear about that.
Yeah.
And what drives us to escape the negative thoughts? Now, depression hates a moving target. Okay, if you go out there into the sunshine and actually go for a walk, okay,
Yes.
very hard, very hard. Now, Tony Robbins, he is really good. Whilst I don't subscribe to his all or nothing and big, fantastic, flamboyant stuff, that's like the 1st of January New Year's resolutions.
Yes.
You do
Yes.
that for
Yes.
8 days and then you can't sustain
Then
it.
you're
So
like, I'm
I
not jumping in the snow and going to the sauna and doing the cold plunge.
exactly,
I'm not doing that
exactly.
every day.
No, 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 no. Instead, you need to do the small things. And I call it a 5 minute gardener. You need to do
Hmm.
small things every day. Imagine you have got a garden, and from now on, you say every day 5 minutes. Never less, never more. Five
Mm.
minutes every day, consistent. After a week, you see a change. After a month, your family thinks, wow, garden looks nice. After 3 months, you get bus tours coming along, say, wow, garden of the year. 5 minutes a day. Now, can you imagine that you do the same thing with your food? Do 5 minutes, maybe meal prep, or
Yes.
buying, or throwing things out that are in the pantry, and
Yes.
that may be
Things that you
tempting
shouldn't eat.
you.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly, just 5 minutes. Imagine you do that in your relationship. Imagine you do that with your children. From now
Mm-hmm.
on, 5 minutes, never more, never less. Sometimes if it's more, hey, cool. But you spend 5 minutes with them. What about
Mm-hmm.
your wife? Yes, you're going through a rocky patch. Well, have you figured out what is her love language?
Yes.
Have you had
Yes.
that
That's a
discussion?
hard one.
What
Yeah.
are her needs? Spend 5 minutes just figuring out what are your needs. How do you feel loved? Ask her that or him. Ask him that. That is often in a relationship, these questions are never asked. So from now on, if you just spend 1% of your day focusing on these various pillars, this 1% will give you a massive compound interest if you do 1% every day. And as it happens, 1% is actually 15 minutes. So could you spend 15 minutes on you?
I
Well,
want to go
you.
back to the garden. So you're like on you. So what would get bus tours to your garden? Because it sounds like that's where you
Mhm.
need to start.
Okay, sounds good to me. Go for the low hanging fruit because
Mm.
you want to have a bit of satisfaction. So, what is the low hanging fruit? Okay. And that's a tricky one because we are all driven by different things. So, a low hanging but very prickly fruit might be eating the frog.
Mm.
Eating the frog in your garden refers to the fact that you are in the morning, you're getting up and you're addressing the things that gives you the biggest challenge, the biggest fear, that those things that you normally procrastinate and run away from.
Mm-hmm.
Now, whilst this is very prickly and it will hurt you to do, the moment you have done it, there's a relief in you and it's so
And you're like,
beautiful.
"Whoa, I did it."
Exactly. You have done an achievement there, and that is such a powerful gain that can give you traction for the rest of the day. So that might be one thing. The other thing might be something that you can choose to modify. For example, if you say, well, I don't know how I shall get 30 minutes or an hour in the gym. I have to
Mm.
go to the gym, I have to get dressed, I've got this, I've got that. Okay, stuff that, forget the gym. What can you do in 2 minutes or in 3 minutes throughout the day?
I can go up
And
and down the
you're
stairs.
touche, or 10 times. That's what I've started.
Yes.
Stairmaster 1.0. So, okay.
We don't need the fancy machine. We've got stairs. Just find some stairs.
Correct, correct.
In
And
the
what I do,
sunshine would be even better.
take your shirt off, okay? If it is acceptable around you, actually get that sunshine on your skin.
Right,
And the,
right.
the reason I'm saying that is go 10 times up and down. And funnily, you should say that. I'm actually doing that. And I go stairs down, stairs up, 10 leaning push ups. 10
Mm,
down, up, push ups. And that is about 5 minutes for 10 stairs and 100 push ups
mm,
leaning.
mm-hmm.
You know it. Now, I
Yeah.
have trained up to that, okay? So I've done that over a few weeks and I'm no longer get the pain in my arms. But can you say, hey, I've done 100 push-ups today?
No, I don't
Who's
know that I've
no?
done 100 push-ups in my
My point. But
life.
that is something you can train. You can just stand vertical against the wall and just go push, push, push.
Yep,
There's
yep,
very little load, but you're doing
yep,
push-ups. Then
yep.
you go with your feet a little bit further away and go push, push, push. Then a bit further away. Very soon you're 45 degrees, and you might say, well, stuff the wall. I might use a chair or a high
Mm,
table initially, then a chair. Then I
mm-hmm,
go on my knees on the ground. So your
mm-hmm.
knees and push-ups. And you're building up a power there. And that's exactly what you do in your garden. You start with something little. You don't know how to address maybe the question about love language with your wife. My wife, when I started these kind of things, she said, "Oh, don't you psychologize me." Uh,
Isn't that
yeah,
always the issue when you have too much training, right? Don't use that on me. Go to your clients, but don't
that's
use it
right.
on me.
That's right, isn't it? So, okay, so maybe instead of having that hard discussion, which has led to 5 different rows at 5 different like occasions, maybe just try one love language for a week and see what happens. So, acts of service, wash up,
Right,
if that is not something that you normally do, or make her a cup of tea, or and I say her, I'm a man, therefore I say her because
right,
I'm
right.
thinking of the opposite other. Um, do something, acts of service for a week, see what the response is. Then change the love language. And if you have no idea, get yourself a book about love languages or listen
Yes.
to a TED talk about love languages, which basically puts you in the driver's seat. You're no longer the victim. You're now taking action and saying, okay, I'm no longer this cork bobbing on the surface of the ocean. I'm actually looking, what can I take control of here? And in this case, you're figuring out the love languages. So in the worst case, it would take you 5 weeks to figure out what is her primary love language or maybe the
Hmm.
secondary love language. Whilst
Yeah.
you're doing that, I also recommend you to actually ask yourself, what is your love language?
Yes. What would you like?
Exactly. What are your needs? Because I would have not been able to answer that initially.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
again, it's 5 minutes a day where you actually just maybe do something.
I'm
There's a lot.
expecting a 5 minute a day garden book from you next. That needs to come out
Exactly.
next. Is that
Well,
as
exactly.
how to tend your garden in 5 minutes a day? You know?
Well, that's actually easy. That would be the easy one. No, there is so much there though. But you need to be aware of the pillars in your life. You were saying what are the low-hanging fruits, and of course
Mm,
these are the things that we game for because they're the easy ones. But
mm-hmm.
no, you need to look at the whole garden. You can't just always picking fruit. But soon there is no more fruit there. You also need to plant. You need to weed. You need to dig
Water.
over. Okay, there are many other things. Just as much as you maybe love to now look at your body and really go to the gym and do 4 hours a day in the gym. Yeah, come on.
Yeah.
Okay, so no. So spread the love about all the pillars,
All
okay?
over the garden. But
That's right.
Stephen, tell us more about I've been calling you Stephen and it's Stefan, isn't it?
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
I'm sorry. I wish you'd corrected me earlier.
I've been called a lot of things in my life. These are the kinder words.
Your steps to sobriety. Tell us a
Yeah.
little bit more about that and where we could find that.
Sure. Steps to Sobriety is now out in its third edition. That is my book, really the kind of flagship book. When I came out of rehab, I thought, well, okay, I'm an empty canvas. What shall I
Hmm.
do? And at that time, I loved cooking. I thought, okay, who am I? I'm German. Okay, what do I? There was always this saying in my head: "There's not enough cheesecake in this world." So I thought, okay, yeah, no, it was always a thing, sort of saying, "Hey, there's not enough joy, not enough happiness in this world." And for me, it was cheesecake. So I thought, you know what? I
Why
can
not?
write a book about cheesecakes. So I learned how to bake German cheesecakes, and I wrote a cookbook about dangerously good German cheesecakes. And that ended up then, oh, actually, I love Christmas cookies. Next book, Dangerously Good German Christmas Cookies.
You wrote Christmas
Uh,
cookie books. I
absolutely.
hope you
Absolutely.
included gingerbread. That's what happens at our
Oh,
house.
hell yes. Hell yes. Hell yes.
Absolutely.
I
Okay, so
lots.
you've got two cookbooks out. Then what?
No, I had ultimately five cookbooks out, but ultimately that they were written by a doctor. Okay, so it was the Encyclopedia of German cheesecakes.
Okay.
Oh, I better put some recipes in there. It was awful. I've taken them down, but ultimately, sooner or later, after being sober for I don't know 6 years and sort of telling a few stories here and there to some people, my wife one day said, "Look, why don't you write a book?" And I thought, nah, I could never ever go out there. But the seed was planted, and I started writing this book. And for about half a year, 3/4 of a year, I really threw myself in there. And I think this was a second wave of healing that came along because
Ah,
there
to
was
tell the
so
story, to be seen.
absolutely and more to get clarity. Because so many times you think you're sober, and I was, but I had not dealt with some of the trauma,
Mm,
and it had not become clear to me. The issue that I had PTSD was not
mm,
clear to me
mm-hmm.
until really two major events. One, writing the book, that became a bit clear to me that, hey, okay, there's maybe more I need to address at some day in the future. And then, truly, when a friend of mine really broke down with his severe PTSD, and then one day came back and said, "Hey, I'm all good.
Oh,
I it will be all fine now." And I thought,
uh-huh.
"Oh my goodness, are you about to do the unthinkable?"
Mm.
And he said, "No, no, no. I've met someone, and it's absolutely fine. I will be sorted in 2 weeks' time." And in my head at that moment, I said, "Yeah, right." And in my head, I had this tick list, like doctors do. We've got these tick lists. Are you
Right.
depressed? Are you PTSD, etc.? So the doctor and me went through the tick list, tick, 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 tick. And suddenly I realized I was not in my tick list describing him. I was describing myself. I
Oh, that's
ticked
a
all the
realization.
boxes.
Yeah.
Hell yes. And that was hard.
Mm,
And then, really, within 2 weeks, he was 80, 90% better. I thought, what's going on here? Who
mm.
did you see? What did you see? And it turned out he saw a hypnotherapist. And lo and behold, skeptic as I was, I saw this woman as well. And she reduced within 3 sessions, she reduced the link between physical arousal during now to things that happened 30, 40 years ago to maybe 20% from 100%.
Oh my
So
goodness.
an amazing, amazing transformation. So this was so beautiful. But writing the book was very cathartic, and the many things came out as I wrote the different chapters
Mm-hmm.
where I grew and where I healed and where
Mm-hmm.
I addressed certain things, which it's amazing once you write things down. One of the things we have not talked about is the power of journaling, and I
Mm,
think that is
mm-hmm.
so important for those people who are in the midst of an addiction and really want to get clarity. It's sort of part of step 4, I guess, but
Right.
it's ongoing for the rest of my life because it gives me so much.
Right.
It's also so important for people who live with a loved one who is still in the midst of addiction, still in the midst of denial, because their actions will impact you tremendously. And often enough, they will trigger you because you have got your own trauma, you have got your
Yes.
own behaviors, you have got, I mean, why do you think you're so angry? Yes, of course, he has broken the dishes because he was drunk and the glass slipped out of his hands. Is that really why you're so angry?
No,
Or
it's
is there
based in other things. Yeah.
exactly. It's all those kind of things. So journaling was so powerful, and I guess writing a book is the ultimate form of journaling. And
Oh,
then isn't it? So actually write your story down. So many of my guests on my show have written books, and it's through the process of healing that they then found their purpose in life and their mission in life, that they actually go out there and say, yes, I have been sexually abused as a child. I was a human trafficking victim. I have been living in a brutal marriage. I have been living in a loveless marriage. I'm an emotional desert inside,
Mm,
and I
hmm.
have now escaped in bulimia, in sex addiction, whatever the addiction
They're
is, whatever
doing
your
the harm to
escapism.
themselves. Yeah.
Exactly. And there are millions of variations of this theme, but the principles are always the same, that there's typically trauma and drama in your life that you have not worked with. Sometimes there is clearly trauma in previous lives. And with that, yes, I did some past life regression. So I did a bit of a look into that, and there's certainly some stuff there. With that, however, I mean the genetic line to your mum and dad,
Yeah,
because
the genetics and possible genetic curses and things that were forced
correct,
upon them that they never dealt
correct,
with, that
correct,
somehow got moved into you on how they
correct,
dealt with it.
and
Steve,
it's
Stefan, we're going to have to come back and visit this again.
Anytime.
Tell the audience where they can reach you. We've got a whole several more podcasts in us. I can hear it. You have been an absolute delight.
Thank
How
you.
can they find you?
Right. I've got two websites. One is Neff Inspiration, which is more the educational side of me, which is all about my show, about the books that I've written, about basically how to be the best version of yourself in a more mental health and personal growth point of view, post-traumatic growth point of view. And then I've got Neff Functional Medicine, which is more my clinic side, where
Mm,
I'm more looking into the practical assessments. How can we actually figure out what is happening within you, and how can we uh, improve those things that really hold you back from being this beautiful person that lives happily and contently for a longer period of time, where we
mm.
can increase your health span and longevity, so to speak. So neffinspiration.com and neffunctionalmedicine.com are the places where you can find me.
Awesome. We will put all those links below, and we're going to have another conversation.
I would be honored. You're an amazing host. Again, thank you very much for asking such probing questions and
Well,
making
thank
this,
you.
oh, absolutely, making this world a better place by having an open, honest, raw discussion. That's what we need around the dinner tables, um, everywhere. The
Yeah.
moment we do that, we can grow. So thank you so much for providing a platform.
Thank you. Thanks so much for tuning into the Faith Over Addiction podcast. Remember, nothing changes until something changes. Today is your day to step out in faith and make a difference. You are a daughter of the King, a woman who can spark incredible ripple effects of hope and healing, not just in your own life, but in your family, your community, and God's kingdom. If this episode encouraged you, bless someone else by sharing it. Send it to a friend who needs a little hope, or post it on Instagram and tag me. I'd love to hear what resonated most with you. And hey, if you're ready to reclaim your God-given identity and create a safe, loving space for yourself and those you care about, let's talk. Book a quick call with me today, and I'd love to hear your story and help you take the next step. Oh, and don't forget to head over to Apple Podcasts, search for Faith Over Addiction, and leave me a review. Your feedback not only makes my day, but helps other women find this podcast and step into freedom too. You are strong, you are loved, and the joy of the Lord is your strength. Nehemiah 8:10. Until next time, keep walking boldly into the life God has for you.